So hello everybody. Hopefully, this is here Mohamed Zaki from the Cambridge Service Alliance. I'm a research associate here. I'm leading the big data stream, researcher stream here. This is one of our one of our webinar series, which is about Internet of Animal Health Things, Opportunities and Challenges. This is a collaboration with one of our industrial partners, which is Zoetis. I'm just gonna flick to the introduction page, which is basically the whole essence of these collaborations, which is we're trying to position that piece about the opportunities and the challenges of Internet of Things, specifically in the context of animal health industry, and how organizations, especially in that context, could generate some revenue streams was with collecting these data in an ethical way and try to analyze it to provide some insightful information to their customers. I'm going to introduce as well my co-authors here in that papers, which is happily to going to be my host today, and they're going to discuss with us the paper. So I would like to introduce Daniel Smith, who is the Senior Director of Business Technology at Zoetis, and also Scott Lyle, the Director of the Center of Digital Innovation at Zoetis. And basically, Zoetis is one of our industrial partners, and I'm going to hand over now to Daniel Smith to introduce the paper.
Thank you, Mohammed. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. This is Daniel Smith. I'm responsible for the technology operations for IoAHTedited, which is Europe, Africa, and the Middle East for Zoetis. Zoetis is one of the world's largest animal health companies. We have operations around the world, and it is our pleasure here today to be a part of the Cambridge Services Alliance. And thank you for the opportunity to continue our journey on implementing services. And it has been our real pleasure to work with you and Andy on this white paper. It's been really a great journey for us. So if we can begin the presentation. Okay, thank you. So the first thing I'd like to focus on really is we're going to spend two parts of it. One is to outline the white paper, and I'm going to focus on some of the topics around the emergence of this important technology and how it's changing our industry. And then Scott's going to refer to some of the opportunities and challenges around the product line and other issues. So what you see in front of you now is really an overview of how this industry is really beginning to evolve. And I think in order for us to understand how we got here today, I think it's important for us to take a few steps back and to think about the journey that we've all been on as technology and internet and many things are really changing the way that we interact and transact. So from my experience over the last 15 years, the standard practice of information technology has been heavily influenced by the internet and the internet of things in the present sense. In simple terms, it really began as an effective way for us all to communicate and to transact through a series of low-cost and available networks. You think back with email, and it started off by us just getting online. This quickly evolved to change many businesses on how we wanted to interact to our customers, and this eventually started to change our business models, and the technology tools soon followed. This is a time when the explosion of web and social, and eventually the explosion of mobile and on-the-go computing in more the modern sense. This is the advent of many of our smartphones and many other type of mobile devices. So the mobile revolution starts to bring us into the future and how it's starting to really revolutionize many aspects. Many of these trends have had a twofold effect, in our opinion, on how we both use and engage technology. One, mobile is starting to really lower the cost and the general availability of technology in general, while at the same time, and arguably perhaps more important, it has changed how we expect to interact with the companies that we work for and ultimately how we buy and receive services. So this brings us to an important trend and what we now call the industrial internet. The present emergence of all these different technologies, or mobile sensor technology, has created what many now call is the new era of this industrial internet. The rapid expansion of the Internet of Things in this last decade has now made technology integral into the daily activities in our lives and even in our culture. The number of sensors shipped worldwide has grown almost 5 times, from about 4.2 billion devices in 2012 to nearly 24 billion in 2014. This is a rapid explosion, literally, of how we start to collect and monetize and really think about how we deliver services as an industry. Not only our industry, but all the industries impacted. Sensor technology is now becoming an integral part of how we transact with our customers. And it's also a cost-effective method for companies to learn about customers, industry, and operations. The application of this data can be used to improve sales, productivity, how we address safety, and at least many other interesting outcomes. Examples in the industry that are already using sensor-equipped technology could be everything from warehouses that are trying to track how they manage their inventory, to how industrial equipment is being used, everything from jet engines to mining equipment. You know, our partner in this alliance, Caterpillar, is one of the innovators in this area. And also how we look at health and health devices around the world. Many of us now carry wearable devices, and they're helping us really understand our own activities. These sensors are now starting to, with overall, in its entirety, the edge devices and the application that drive this industrial internet, and they're becoming a fundamental way in which we both monitor activity, and it changes really the output of a myriad of different businesses, including our own. This brings, as a result, farming and data management practices, which is really relevant to our industry, is changing in what we call the advent of precision farming. We're starting to get down to data at the farm level. So for many years, like we said, we've had internet and we've had things such as farm animals, machinery, and processes. However, only recently, these things are now being integrated, as you can see in the illustration on the screen. All this is streamlined, relevant, accessible. It's starting to drive really interesting outcomes for everybody involved. It's also making data available on the go, and it's also being able to be translated into meaningful information. In our case, a farm no longer relies on sort of conventional wisdom being passed down from generation to generation. Also, it's removing some of the biases of manual intervention, where we have automated information collection, and it's creating a lot of great baseline opportunities for our customers. So, as farmers now start to transition from traditional farming into precision farming, what it allows is now the opportunity to look at very predictive analytics and the benefit of sensor-driven devices that can capture the data. It now starts to offer great opportunities to move towards animal care and also starting to maximize returns. In other words, data management is now both time and cost efficient for the farmer. And what it's now doing, back to my original point, is now bringing the best practices of IT management down into places where this type of technology had not been available traditionally in the past. So my last point is starting to explore the use and the applications of the Internet of Things. There's 2 parts to this. One is the data collection and the processing of the Internet of Animal Health Things is starting to change data-driven business models that effectively handle 2 elements. One is the raw data that's being collected by devices and applications. This comes in many different shapes and forms. It could be geographical, contextual, specific, and also identifiable by each animal that is managed by a farmer or, in the case of a companion animal or a dog owner, the person that's managing that care. So now, what's emerging now is device manufacturers, are able to help these different constituents manage lots of different kinds of data. The second part of this equation now is the ability for precision farm businesses to get into the data using analytics, which may be descriptive or predictive. But one of the main benefits now of precision farming using the IoT is being able to use these prescriptive analytics to inform decision making, and also to start looking at such outcomes as herds growth over time, and also being able to prescribe a sort of baseline and helping folks understand when an intervention might be required. And these things, everything from movement cameras to also just general activity of an animal. So there's a tremendous amount of potential around what could be collected and how we can also enrich responsible use of that data. So in conclusion, the Internet of Animal Things from a technology perspective, it has many constituents and stakeholders in the value chain. In part, this paper was intended to start to create a dialogue with the many industry constituents and value chain holders. And what we're asking is to start to look at ways that we can standardize infrastructure and create best practices around the use of IoT. And also, it's helping the different elements to work together to create trust and also to create transparency on how these different devices can be used and the potential of it over time. So at this point, I conclude my remarks. I want to transition to Scott Lyle, who will discuss some of the important opportunities and challenges of the IoAHT. Over to you, Scott.
All right. Thanks, Daniel. Good afternoon, everyone. So, as Daniel said, next we want to share some of our thoughts about the challenges and the opportunities that we're seeing as we build out our own digital ecosystem. And, of course, related back to the paper that we wrote for the Internet of Things in Animal Health. But so, you know, I guess before I jump into the slide, let me give you a quick background about my role, because I think it's important context to understand some of the comments we want to share in our perspective. Again, I run Zoetis' Center for Digital Innovation, which is located in London's Tech City. And essentially it's a centralized team of developers and digital product people, folks like that sit at the regional level within Zoetis. And what we do is we drop into the various country markets and we work with the local teams there that can consist of brand managers, directors of the species teams, directors of various business units, in order to understand the challenges facing our customer. And then ultimately, can we solve these challenges with digital products, new technologies, and of course, supportive commercial models. So on the other side of this, Daniel and I work very closely together trying to figure out how to create robust data architecture and modeling for these digital products. And of course, why we're very keen and been working very hard with Mohamed to frame up best practices. Getting back to the slide, really, one of the reasons we wrote this paper is that we found ourselves right in the middle of this whole bringing the Internet of Things to Zoetis. We were becoming the agents of change to our customer and really bringing transformation to the industry. And it's interesting to think because it really wasn't that long ago that the world was a simpler place. When we were building software and applications, they were for very discrete purposes dropped off at our customer. They were standalone. And as Daniel was talking about, we're now in this era of highly networked environments. You know, as he mentioned, you know, with the advent of mobile technologies, cloud computing, advanced algorithms, sensor technologies, we're in this place now where because we can, and the advances in technology, we're not just building applications or digital products and solutions for our customer, but we're able to step out and build applications and solutions for our customer. And we're actually even building applications for other stakeholders in the industry value chain. So we're creating a very complicated environment, and we're constantly asking ourselves questions about how should we be responsible or responsibly using the data that these new digital assets and solutions are collecting. You know, in our world, an example would be, and really often our vet customers are in need of greater transparency into farm activity in order that they can intervene earlier and provide more supportive care. But the only way to do that is if we start trying to solve solutions within a farm, for example, that do this. Or maybe it even requires jumping into for a solution for the slaughterhouse or partnering with a feed company. So I'm just trying to give you an example of how the complexity is mushrooming right in front of us. The diagram you'll see on the slide around precision livestock farming is just to give you a sense of the processes, the inputs and the outputs, and how we might create a touch point into one of these pieces. But whatever it might be, we're in this process that everything is being wired up. Thermostats, trucks, even the pigs and the cows. And we're trying to correlate the data into new insights and trends for the people that are using these digital products. You know, and I think part of the complexity creates a problem, or a challenge for us as in all of our industries, is that the technology is complex and there's many actors involved, but it's not always apparent to any particular actor or user of these applications what's happening. And the story gets even more complex because when we're designing these digital experiences, we're trying to remove the burden that they impose upon a user. And by doing that, in some ways, we're making them more seamless and more frictionless. And it's less likely that it's apparent to the user what's really happening. So what we're trying to do when we're rolling out these technologies and these platforms, and data is being shared between different individuals or different stakeholders, is to actually force the decision making or the customer choice into the product experience, so that it's very apparent that the user is electing to share something. Because in this architecture, this network, we are now starting to have the situation where you have to give in order to get. The other thing that we're doing is that you know, we're trying to make sure that when we do share data between two different points, is that it's redacted, is that we're only sharing enough information for some process to occur and no more, in order to protect the users of this information, because we're all in this ecosystem together. So, you know, you can imagine that when we talk to a farmer, and or rather, let's even say we give a farmer an option to share some information, it's very clear, even though the purpose of having collecting the data inside the application in the first place was to invite the vet to provide medical oversight, we're actually giving the farmer at that point in time a choice whether they want to share that data. So in conclusion, I guess what we're trying to describe is a very complicated place where we're trying to be very responsible about the use and management of the data that's being collected and shared in these ecosystems. And we're asking, how do we protect it? What should best practices be? We're creating literally billions of touch points that are all cross-integrated. Even though it's usually for the benefit of all of the stakeholders involved, it's still very complicated, and there's a lot of open questions around this. And for Zoetis, really, from our point of view, the goals are really still the same, and that's to provide data to our vet customers in order that they, in turn, can provide better clinical value to their customers. So, you know, just as a final remark, I guess I would say that there's just a lot at stake for us to get this right. Precision medicine and animal health, precision livestock farming, food security, all kinds of things that benefit society. And our paper really is a call to arms on the subject. So let me pass you to Mohamed to talk a little bit about data-driven business models.
Thanks, Daniel and Scott, for this introduction about the papers and actually the good insights about how the animal health industry start to tap into the data-driven business models or digital services and try to transform from traditional business models into digitalized services. I'm going to talk a little bit about the data-driven business model. So based on the discussions that Daniel and Scott try to emphasize here, that we can see the broader role of the Internet of devices and also the big data to enable that shift to the digital services. But to put that in a context, we thought about it would be a good idea just to put that in a framework that could be explaining how this innovation could happen. And really, that comes back to our previous paper, and we have a webinar in this already, about the data-driven business model innovation blueprint, which organization could use to stimulate some ideas. and tap into the digital services world, specifically in using sensor devices or the big data. But to put that in the context of animal health industry, we thought about that you need to answer these 6 questions in this framework, just to summarize what we've been talking about this webinar. So one thing you need to think, what is the target outcomes? I mean, every organization has a lot of ideas, and it's worth ideas to investigate. But in terms of these ideas, which one you should do some priority and try to pilot it and basically launch it afterwards. And in the context of the precision farming itself, we can see that the target outcome here is about the continuous using of this data could allow a lot of improvement in the precision in the livestock farming processes management itself, and also could help and allow farmers and also all the organizations that value chains to personalize drug treatments to individual animals. So transform from deal with all animals equally. Actually, now you could personalize a lot of drugs and a lot of services for individual animals specifically. And that could allow us to distinguish between the individual animals with traditional herd liver patching, and also to have a closer observations of the health of different health indicators. That could be, for example, alterations in weight gain, the feed, the water intake, other disease symptoms as well. That's really could be the overarching outcome that the organization could look at in terms of this. But going to what kind of things we should offer specifically in the data ecosystem itself, and that could go to different 3 types of offering. So you could collect the data as a raw, which is you don't do any processing. You're just collecting this data from sensor devices or wearable technologies in a specific scale and frequency. That really could be beneficial in itself by present some warnings for any system failures and etc. But also if you start to process these data, that could be translated to information, and that could identify some patterns in terms of growth rates and animal health and etc. Going to the predictions and prescriptive models, actually Daniel was talking about and Scott, that could allow us to go beyond that and talk about real-time adjustment, risk mitigations, which is allow us to create some stable market, offer a lot of offering to our customers and different as well stakeholders with that ecosystem basically. Different knowledge for governments to regulate some policies, different as well knowledge to universities, different knowledge to the farmer, different to actually as well the retailers in that aspect. But to use that, you need to rely on data as a key resource here. So in terms of precision farming, actually they mix together between the internal data, which has a direct interactions with the business, something about you collecting data like temporal data, patch data, flock camera systems to monitor size of the animals and weight gain, etc. But you could combine that with other external data across the collaborations of multiple stakeholders with the ecosystem. And like the feed manufacturer himself, the vets, the farmer himself, and also other sort of customer-generated data that could be helpful in that context. And really, this is the notion about the big data, is actually identifying what the different level of data sources you could combine it together just to generate insights and also allow you to deliver this service offering you promise your customer to provide. Then the key offering here, which is the 4th thing that this context of industry focus about, is actually across the different virtual value chain, we call it, of the data. So it's a data acquisition. So you're capturing this data in the first place, then you record the multiple attributes for each animal, going to aggregate these data from multiple sources and multiple devices as well. Then you could generate different analytics as well, like temporal trend analysis, prescriptive, predictive analytics, just to enable this intervention and also inform the decision makers about it. But this also should be aligned with some revenue streams as well, because these organizations invest a lot in this infrastructure. So there are potential revenue streams that should comes from that kind of services, which is typically in that context could be relying usage fees and alongside as well the customer buying the sensor devices itself. But within this, I think Scott and Daniels were talking a lot about the challenges. In that context, there are different challenges here. I'm not going to go in details on this, but there are data collection method problems because it's unstructured from different devices. Every device has its own format, all sorts of problems here when it comes to the transmission as well of the data from one side to the organization, data centers, and etc. We've have a lot of problems about who control what in terms of data sharing because it's across multiple stakeholders. Then going to the concessions and data privacy problems, which comes to the quality issues. What kind of concession form you need your customer to basically concede, because there are some human intervention here as well. The farmer address, the pet owner address, that could be combined again with the animal data, which could be a private problem. Then sort of third party involvement issues, which is some customers and farmers specifically don't like their data to be shared with government, for example. So if we're going to collect the data and involve third party in that, there are going to be a challenge. How we can convince our customers that we are keeping the data in the right format, and also we're not sharing it with someone. And if we're sharing it, it has to be under their permission and concession as well. So that is kind of like what you said is like a general or a summarized framework about what we discussed, what we call a data-driven business into precision farming, and how different aspects of that framework could be answered in that context. But I'm gonna recap now about the conclusion of the paper. Is actually the industry here trying to call for a responsible model, and I think I'm iterating now with what Scott and Daniel was talking, especially in terms of a good manner of collecting these data and also addressing all the problems, challenges across the privacy and personal data collection as well. Then there are some as well an aspect of how we can standardize that. So in terms of the infrastructures and the practices that we should collect that, and it's really about how we can collect that in an ethical way, just to get benefit across the value chain and across different stakeholders, not only for the pharmaceutical industry, but also for the customer and customer of customers, but also as well with the governments and all sort of stakeholders here.